All right, y'all. So we're back on Voces Unidas here on KROJ 101.5 FM. We are produced by Valley Views SFV Media and Voces Unidas in Pacoima. We're here live in the studio from Pueblo Y Salud in the City of San Fernando. Today your hosts are Diosy,
Melisa,
and Teodora.
and Teodora. Tell us who we're here with.
We are very lucky to be here today with none other than Ruben Rodriguez.
Woo!
Ruben Rodriguez is the founding board president and current executive director of Pueblo Y Salud Incorporated, known as PYS. And it is a social and human service agency headquartered in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. The primary mission of Pueblo Y Salud is alcohol, drug, and tobacco abuse prevention and education and community empowerment. Mr. Ruben Rodriguez has been involved in substance abuse treatment and prevention for the last 32 years and is one of the founding members of the Los Angeles Drug and Alcohol Policy Alliance, known as LADAPA as an acronym, and the California Alcohol Policy Alliance, known as CAPA, and former board member and board president for 8 years of Alcohol Justice and the Alcohol Industry Watchdog Organization. He is also a founding member of the Cesar E. Chavez Commemorative Committee of the San Fernando Valley that has organized the yearly Cesar E. Chavez March for Justice for the last 31 years. And as director of Pueblo Y Salud, Mr. Ruben Rodriguez has worked diligently to foster parent and youth involvement, to promote good health policy, and encourage grassroots involvement in social justice issues such as better wages for workers, equal access to education, voter registration, Latino political representation, comprehensive immigration reform, and removing drugs and alcohol from minority communities. Ruben is husband to Adriana, his partner for 53 years, a father to 7 children, grandfather to 17 grandchildren, and great-grandfather to 2 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
His personal mission is to make them all social activists and change agents wherever their individual paths take them. His daughter, Celeste Rodriguez, is former mayor of the City of San Fernando and newly elected California State Assemblywoman for the 43rd District.
Woo, woo.
Let's go.
Wow. That's quite the bio.
I know, I'm out of breath. I'm like, whoa.
Thank you, Teodora. Thank you for reading that.
It's
an
beautiful.
honor.
It is beautiful. Ruben, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining us
Sure
on
thing.
Monday, starting off the week with us here.
Pleasure.
This is the second week of December,
Mm-hmm.
last month of the year.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up and, bringing in a new segment with our team here. We were talking about roots and resilience for the last 3 or so months. And, we were discussing roots and resilience as we were dealing with a lot of political issues in our community going through the elections. And so, we wrapped that up, and now we're going to be talking about community and culture. And so with these two subjects, we thought no one better to wrap up and bring in this segment other than yourself, who, has already pioneered so much change in our community. And so really, I want to get to know, Ruben, this person who has opened up so many opportunities for us and our work, and who has been able to kind of mentor us in a sort of way, right? Give us guidance in so many subjects that we read in this bio already. But yeah, who is Ruben Rodriguez? We read this bio, but, where are you from? Where did you grow up? And why are you a social activist? And why do you do the work that you do?
What a loaded question you just gave it right now.
Feel free to answer that however you want. It doesn't have to be. It's a very loaded question. It is. But again, it's a loaded question because this is very intentional. Having you here with us, we're very honored to have you here, right?
Thank you.
But yeah, so.
Well, it's at my age, it's a long trajectory. So it's kind of hard to keep the chronology, I guess, of events together in an order that's understandable. But like most people, I guess, you don't sometimes you don't really choose. You kind of end up,
Right.
where you're supposed to be. At the end of the day, it's where we all end up where we're supposed to be. As intentional as we may want to be. In the best of all worlds, we always think we should be someplace else, but in reality, pretty much any moment in time, you are where you're supposed to be. And the opportunity or the person or the teacher, whichever you want to define it or call it, it appears. And you may have already heard that someplace. But I actually was born in Mexico, in a little was called an ejido, or a little rancho, as we would say. Ejido after the agrarian reform, after the Mexican Revolution, so it became an ejido. For those of you that I don't know, you're familiar with it. It's communal land, kind of early experiments in, I guess it was truly socialism or communism, to use some of the terminology that's used in current times. So the land belonged to everybody. So they brought me here when I was 1 year old. My mother, who ended up being a single parent, bringing me along with my grandparents. My grandfather was the first one to come here as a bracero, on a guest worker program that labor was needed here.
Yeah.
So they had a bracero program where Mexican men, and mostly men, would come to work in the fields or any place they would hire them, and then they would go back. So he came here and then went back and decided, to bring the family. And actually, he was one of the first, if not the first one from the rancho, or the ejido to have come to the United States. So he went back, with better clothes, money in his pocket. And a lot of family, friends, and members said, we might want to give it a go. So they came. They came back. There was a group of about 20 of them, that came with him, looking for work. So somewhere on the first or second trip back, they brought me and my mother. My brother and grandmother brought me. I was 1 year old. As I would hear the pláticas with my tíos, my aunts and uncles, we came as alambres. We didn't. That term "wetback" did not apply to us. They come across, they cut the wire basically. It's just a little fence or whatever was at the border in the Imperial Valley by Mexicali. So that was the first stopping place for our family at that point. Working, picking cantaloupe and whatever field work had to be done. So they brought me when I was 1 year old, and between 1 and 5, I guess. My aunts, my uncles mostly. They were younger men. Being places where shouldn't be. We used to call it Martinez Social Hall.
I just want to remind everyone that you guys are tuned in to Radio Ollin, KROJ 101.5 FM. We're coming to you live from the studios here at Pueblo Y Salud in the City of San Fernando. You're tuned in to Voces Unidas with Diosy, Melisa, and Teodora on KROJ 101.5 FM. And you guys are listening to Ruben Rodriguez's voice. He's here with us live in the studio, letting us know a little bit about his history.
Sure. And thank you for having me. So it's I'm trying to answer the original question had many facets to it.
Yeah,
but
I'm so riveted.
We're enjoying this. Yes, continue.
Because the social activist side, I guess, or that struggle for justice, I guess was engendered in me because my uncles, like I said, they would get picked up or rounded up. The migra, the immigrant INS was then making raids. They would literally come to your house and take you, or take the family. and they were always being deported, and so our family would get deported, and they took. I must have been 3 or 4 years old, because it's one of the earliest memories I have. Because I was playing in the front house. We used to go to this place, Doña Maria, right here. They had built like little houses in back, little shacks. I mean, they clearly were not up to code, but that's where they were rent, cheaper rent.
Yeah.
And so we lived in one of the two little back houses, and I was in the front house playing with her daughter. And the migra came, and they took my grandmother. And so, and my mother was at work, or the family members were at work. So Doña Maria got scared and took me, I guess, to a neighbor's house, because that's all I remember was being in a strange house on somebody's front porch. I guess I was 3 or 4 years old, because all I remember, I was there crying and crying and crying, thinking I'm never going to see my grandmother again. I'm never going to see my mother again. Yeah. And I guess I cried myself to sleep, because I don't remember anybody ever picking me up. I was just, another episode.
Yeah.
And then, so, these things are always happening. I remember another time the migra came, and they were banging the door down. Everybody, they were there like 6, 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I have my tia Elvira, who, she was a little wiry thing, always causing a commotion, And and I remember she went like, shh, and she hugged me and ran into a little closet, and then she says, "Cállese, cabrón, porque nos lleva la migra," meaning like, shut up, because the migra is gonna take us, And we didn't open the door, so I guess that time they didn't take anybody. But one of my other memories of that time, I was 5. And then at that point, I'm on a bus with my mother on our way to Tijuana. We were being deported. So we end up in Tijuana, living in a vecindad for, I guess, a few weeks or a month, And she put me on a plane. And I remember that ride because, she was a single mom at the time and decided to come back to work. And at that time, my grandparents were in the rancho, were in Mexico. So she put me on a plane. And I tell people these planes had propellers, and I guess the cabins weren't pressurized, because I just remember that ride because I was airsick, I was vomiting, my ears were hurting, and the stewardesses were very kind to me. They were taking care of me because my mother said, "Can you look out for this little kid?" Right? But that's why I remember that's so vivid, right? Because it was that kind of experience. So at that point, I spent 2 years in the rancho, where called Hayamitla, which I never knew until an adult. It meant place, lugar de colmenas, a place of beehives. That's a Nahuatl word, but we know. And El Valle de Ameca, with the now that the Amecatl, which, now that I'm trying to recapture my roots. You realize it just means cordón o hilo de agua, meaning the river. It's just a string of water, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up spending 2 years in Mexico. Great years, my tia lived, her house was by the swamp. So those memories, besides the stars in the sky and, eating guayabas, climbing trees, and eating these other round things that looked like olives, ahuilotas, going to the river. And millions of fireflies in the swamp.
Oh, wow.
And thousands of frogs croaking at the same time, So those are memories that, as old as I am, you don't even see that in Disneyland, right?
Yeah.
So that was great. So I came back when I was 7 years old already. And by that time, my mother had remarried. At that point, they were just surviving, working, trying to pay for the house, keeping up with the rent. The house that is not my brother's, because she passed away. Tiny little house. We added like 4 rooms, so the house doubled in size. But there was 2 little rooms, and there were 6 of us in that room. And I remember, because I hear the rents and the mortgage payments right now. I remember their mortgage payment. They paid like $10,000. This is like 1962. They paid, I think, $10,000 for the house, and the mortgage payment was $80. And I remember that was a struggle.
Yeah.
They were struggling to pay the $80.
For sure.
So
Wow.
so
In Pacoima, right?
yeah, that at that time we jumped around on Mercer Street, Fillmore, and that house was on by Telfair Elementary. The house is still there, and my sister still lives on Judd Street. Her house is kind of behind Bobo's. I'm sure you guys know.
Yes.
That's a landmark.
It is.
She lives on Judd.
Yeah, my breakfast burrito's there.
Yeah. I make a stop there now and then. So there was that's where we ended up.
Yeah.
And so then you grow up in Pacoima, and I look at life like you can be on the same street, and but there's like different frequencies, kind of like the radio.
Yeah.
Because the people I was running with were what I nowadays call the knuckleheads.
Yeah.
And at that time it wasn't the crystal meth and even the coke. It was everybody's older cousin was using heroin. And I remember our streets got flooded with what we called now, they were seconals, truanals, opiates. Pills by the thousands. I remember being in junior high, and whoever was dealing would be selling you 5 of these for $1. And we had a lot of people that overdosed, and not a few. I mean, people in my age set, the people I would hang out with, I would say 70% of them are gone. Just either for different reasons related to that lifestyle, all the consequences of that. But then I remember the other families, the ones that would call my sister Wada, she still remembers, right? But they were already first, second generation here, so they were more established. They would call her a Wada, right? Even though we were really Alambres, we never crossed the river. They didn't let him come out and play with us, play football or anything. And at that time in our street, I had 2 Japanese friends, and one of them dressed like us, did what we did, spoke a lot of Spanish, went out with Chicanas with the girls, and then there was another family down the street, completely different. He ended up being an accountant. Our other friend, Gary, I don't know where he ended up, but, they were, in many ways, he was like us, but the other family, he ended up in college. I don't think Gary ended up in college, right? 2 different families, both same ethnic background, kind of like us, right? None of us were college bound from my crew, but other neighbors were.
Yeah.
And his name was Ronnie, the one that was more college bound. I didn't realize it then. And sometimes we would be playing football. Talk about the cultural aspect of things, right? We would be playing football in the street, and then he'd quit in the middle of the game on the weekend. I remember it was on Saturdays or Sundays. And then he would leave the game. And I would tell him, come on, the game's not over. We need you. I said, why do you got to go right now? Come on. He said, no, I got to go to school. I said, but it was a weekend, right? So what do you mean school? He says, yeah, I got to go to Japanese school. And look, when you're young like that, I was saying, why do you got to go to Japanese school? You're already a Jap. I didn't get it.
Yeah, back then.
They were way ahead of us. They were creating the Japanese Cultural Center. That's right there I think on Sheldon.
On Sheldon and Laurel Canyon.
I went to middle school right next to that school, the Culture Center.
Yeah, they have all, they had the keeping the language alive, learning Japanese. They had the second, third generation stuff and, cultural differences.
Yeah.
And then you had the dojo there, people, in martial arts and, something we've been talking about, the people I work with for years, about a cultural center, which we haven't done it yet, at least not locally. Teachuchas, to some degree, has done it more on the literature side, on the book side, but not quite the way they're doing it. So that was just my trajectory, hanging out. And just by chance, two friends of mine, they were up to no good one day, and we were just, me and my compadre, who he's no longer with us. He ended up years later strung out on crack. So he passed away maybe 10 years ago. But we were out just cruising, as they say, right? And they're running up to me. They had just been involved in some illegal activity. Let's just say that. They flagged me down to give them a ride. And as we're riding, they start talking crazy. By crazy, I mean, it says, yeah, he says, look, he says, we're going to a demonstration. That was around the time of the Chicano moratorium. And, you know, if you've heard of the Chicano moratorium, that one, the biggest, if not, probably one of the biggest demonstrations against Vietnam War that happened. And it was Latinos, Chicanos, right? And then the riot broke out, and the sheriffs attacked the people, and you know, people were singing, dancing, and next thing you know, it's tear gas. People got killed and beat up. You know?
Yeah.
So he was talking about he had gotten into 8mm film at that time. There weren't phones and all this. He says, I'm gonna film, not video. I'm gonna film the demonstration, but I need security, because the cops are going to come after me to try and take the camera.
Right. Totally.
You know? So I'm listening to him, and then he tells me, you know, you should go to college. He says, we're in college now. And I'm thinking, college? I had never thought of going to college, you know?
Yeah.
I had dropped out in the 10th grade. So he tells me this, and then he mentions friends, people I knew since junior high. And he says, so-and-so is going to school, so-and-so is going to school. And I'm thinking, I just saw them in the corner. They were loaded out of their mind on Reds, you know, the pills I was talking about earlier. You know? But at that time, they were literally recruiting us off the street. You know, they had started the EOP program, Equal Opportunity Program. So people that were, you know, more advanced, or that were more conscious of things that, you know, going on, they said, you know, go to college. I had dropped out in the 10th grade. I had never thought of going to college. You know?
Yeah.
So, and it didn't make sense. I didn't really realize I could have just gone. I could have applied and they would have taken me. But instead I said, you know what? I went back to adult school. So I graduated 3 years later than I was supposed to from night school. And then at that point, I applied to Cal State University Northridge. And it had just changed a few years before from Valley State College.
Okay.
So I ended up in college, and that's where my trajectory in the Chicano movement started. What you know, if you read about it, Chicano movement. And here I am, years later.
Wow.
Wow.
It makes me so emotional, because as you're sharing your story, especially with the resources and those programs that were started at that time, it makes me reflect on what I received as a student, from a young girl from Pacoima. I was traveling, you know, public transit with my sister, trying to stay busy with school programs and surviving off school after school programs, off of summer lunch programs. And for us, food insecurity was one of like the heaviest things that we had to face as well. And I found refuge in college with EOP, with our food pantry, and to hear how they were trying to recruit when you were younger makes me emotional, because I am just another reflection, but just a bit better of a situation than in the times that a lot of folks, young people in Pacoima, were growing up in. So it makes me reflect really like how much of a difference our struggles have changed, but we still need so much more organizing, so much more of an opportunity to be able to feel empowered to go to school. But school is not for everyone, right? But for folks who feel that comfort in going and finding these programs, I was lucky. I was one of the lucky ones to be able to find programs to keep me out of trouble. But EOP to me was so special in college, because I completely could have lost my financial aid, and they bumped me because I am a child of undocumented parents, and they gave me opportunities that, you know, I would have fell through the cracks at a huge public university without these programs. So it's just really interesting, and I'm really grateful to hear your story, because it makes me reflect on my story now, and like what I went through, what I'm going through. So just thank you for sharing. Anyways, I just want to add that bit because it was in the moment. So I don't mean to cut
No,
through.
Yes.
it is very much in the moment.
It's generational.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? My story is not unique. Yeah, I got to meet people from up north, McFarland, other counties, field, you know, people coming from the fields. And you know, and those struggles are still going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the immigration issue with,
issues are
you
still
know, with
Yeah.
our current president threatening to do this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's scary.
and you know, it could go two ways.
Mhm.
You know, there's enough. California is progressive enough that there will be resistance.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, at all levels. So I think it might be worse in other states
So,
if he
yeah.
really does what he
Texas.
said he's going to do.
Yeah, deport
Which he-
families together again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he wants, to deport families together.
Yeah.
Like if it's that was like one of his biggest talking points is we'll deport a parent if the kids, and they're like, what about the kids? And they're like, well, they could follow if they want to. That's
Well,
what the whole-
it was about optics, right? He doesn't want to separate families, so he's just going to take everybody.
Exactly.
He's just going to take the whole
Yeah.
family and take
Yeah.
them out. And then also the idea of reversing the birthright citizenship in the 14th Amendment is going to be
Which
very
is
interesting.
unconstitutional. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unless he gets, 3/4 of the Congress, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Which is absurd and I think is pretty barbaric, but I think that was definitely something that I was reflecting on when you were telling us your story, because like my family like was moving across the border like very freely in the 70s. My grandfather like was moving back and forth like very, very easily, and so was my grandma. Like my grandma and my grandpa met here in the States and then went back to Mexico and then came back here, and then my grandma got pregnant, went back to Mexico to have my mom, which is like really different, right? You normally want to have like with our birthright citizenship here in the United States, like a lot of mothers and people who are pregnant like come here to have babies because it's important to be able to have like citizenship. And so that was something that was really different in the 70s. There's like a lot more movement, and there's a lot of people that are like, oh, would you want like an open border? And like sometimes I think about, I'm like, borders are like arbitrary. They're not real, right? There's something that's like created within geopolitics, and they're created so that there's the haves and the have-nots. There's like these things that are being like established, and people have always moved, people have always migrated, people have always adapted and changed and like moved to different places. And I think like exactly what you said around like I don't remember if it was your dad or like one of your tios that like came back and he like had a bit more money, had nicer clothes. Like that's the same thing that happened. Yeah, that's the same thing with my grandfather. Like he's a bit younger, but like he like there was opportunity here, right? That wasn't happening, and he would be getting paid more like in the fields like than he was getting paid in Mexico, and like all these things. And I think a lot of people just like, I don't know, I always remember like talking to my grandparents and them saying like, we didn't want to live here. We didn't want to be here, right? We wanted to be in Mexico, but it wasn't financially stable. It was not financially beneficial for them to stay in Mexico. And so they had to come back because this was where the jobs were. This is where the money was. And I think that's also something that like gets really lost in like this immigration discussion, is like the fact that it's like, oh, there's people coming over here, there's such like wickedness behind it, but like in reality it's like that people are surviving, and like this is the best way that they're trying to survive. Like this is where they think, and they know, right? There's like very large track records of like knowing that like this is the best place that they can like survive and like have families and things like that. And so I don't know, I always go back to that, because even like talking to like very close people of mine, it's just like, do we not realize how like our own people like came here because like things weren't working out? And it's just like, it just made me think a lot of like what you're saying. It was like a lot of reflecting on just like my own family's history. And like, right, my mom is the oldest, and she was born in Mexico, and then like my two, my aunt and my uncle were born here, and like the differences between like them two, and like my mom had to like get her citizenship, and like she had to like go through the test, but then like my tia and Theo like didn't have to do that. And so there's just like all of these like dichotomies when you're talking about like immigration, and even when it's like, oh, you're gonna get rid of birthright citizenship, and you're like, okay, well, is that all the people that are just being born today, or like is it other like older people? It's like, what do you even like, what is the point of like having all of these like arbitrary laws when it's like people just trying to figure out like
survival?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just really inspiring for you.
It is.
Yeah,
It is very inspiring.
All these conditions are artificial. You know, it's the wrong narrative, and it is complex because, you know, the people coming is, especially like in the fields, right? Like right now, the situation in Mexico, at least talking to some of the people that go more frequently, is that, look, in the smaller towns, the smaller villages, like a rancho like ours, where it's an ejido and the land is already pretty much divided and there's no industry, no manufacturing. It was agricultural. As families grow and more children are born, is where are they going to go?
Yeah.
So he said what's happening right now is in Mexico, if you're 15, 16 years old and there's no jobs where you're from, you have a choice. You either come north,
yeah,
you know, illegally, and it's not illegal. Well, it's illegal because of the laws that are created.
Yeah.
Or you join the cartels and start doing things you're not supposed to, you know. So there is a class situation because if you're already educated, you got a career in Mexico or in any of the countries, you're not going to come over here.
Yeah.
Why should you be suffering or running, you know, running from immigration or coming over the mountain or crossing the Rio
Surviving
Grande?
through,
You know?
yeah.
Why you wouldn't be going through that?
Going
you know?
through the desert.
You know, the narrative is wrong, number one, and they've lost the whole sense of, you know, this whole notion of vilifying a certain group of people for political gain or purposes. You know, the narrative is wrong. You know, number one, in the Treaty of Guadalupe after the Mexican-American War, we were guaranteed open borders. You know, and you're talking about, you know, it was easier. You know, when I told you my uncles, they would get deported today and they would be back the next day. And they would cross into the San Diego Railroad yard, jump on a boxcar, and jump off right here in Pacoima because the boxcars were moving slow enough. They would just come back like overnight, you know. And they would say, me vine trampeando. And I never made the connection because during the Depression and the Dust Bowl, you know, have you seen the tramps or the beggars, you know, the hobos carrying something?
Oh, yeah.
They were starving in Oklahoma and all that because of the Dust Bowl, you know, with the topsoil. So they were moving to Texas, California, wherever, and they would jump on the freight trains. And I think that's where that word came from. Se venían trampeando. They were like tramps, you know, like the hobos that were moving throughout the country.
You know.
Yeah. So that's, but the narrative is also wrong. Number one, everybody here comes from someplace else.
Yeah.
You know, if we talk about the British, you know, I don't know, they emptied the penal colonies over there and came here and went to Australia, right? So all those, they were criminals.
Yeah.
Convicted, and they're here, you know. So when you hear America, they say, well, they're the foreigners, you know. Some of us share the perspective of they're the invading force that stayed here. You know? Well, this is occupied land, right?
Yeah.
So
Just talking about that.
And that's just on the Mexican Latino side. I mean, think of the injustice done to the indigenous peoples, the tribes here, you know.
Yep.
And the migration is natural throughout the world. People would follow the game, or you follow the weather. You know, if winter came, you went where there was food. Or if the buffalo herds moved to, you know, another region because of the weather, then the tribes would follow the food, you know. I remember my grandmother telling you, somebody said, what do you say when somebody says, where are you from? ¿De dónde eres? And then she said, well, what's the answer? She said, "O donde te vaya mejor." Where are you from? I'm from where my family can live better. You know, it wasn't, I'm from here, I'm from there. I'm from where I can feed my family, where my
Yeah.
family has shelter, my family has food.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
crazy.
So
it's,
those are the narratives that need to be changed.
Yeah.
as I'm
beautiful.
hearing this conversation, I'm reflecting a lot on like my childhood as well, and like my upbringing, my experiences like having undocumented family, but also my recent experiences, like recent as in like this last week. I started working with a like small business that services like the essential workers of the community. It's a food business, and so we start selling like at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. We're already like fully in the grind. And a lot of the people that come to the puesto are like people that are coming from pueblos.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the conversations that we're having at the puesto is very much like, like conversations of like, I miss home. I don't want to be here. I'm going to work. And the people that I work with, they sell like comida casera mexicana, estilo Guanajuato, and like son, basically they call them burritos, pero son tacos paseados. And that's how they started. And now they sell like guisados. They sell so much more, but authentic flavors. And so la gente viene, like people come from, people that are from like pueblos are like there first thing in the morning, because they know that they're gonna get their burritos, and they're gonna be able to keep them with them, and they're eventually gonna be tacos paseados. And like we have that tradition now here with them, and we have our regulars, but hearing these stories of just recently we spoke to a gentleman who was talking about he has been here for 5 months, and he's 23 years old, and he's doing roofing, and he's making great money, but he has no intentions of like staying here. He has no intentions of building a family here. He has no intention. He's here to work. And he was letting us know like that back home in the pueblo he's in, like he's trying to like build a restaurant, a home. He's trying to help like the local school, and like he sends money for the youth, but he also expressed how like a lot of the stuff that he sends out or money that gets sent out like gets taken, and it doesn't reach the community out there. It doesn't reach the children, doesn't reach the schools. It doesn't always go towards his restaurant or his home. And so like just reflecting on how similar the struggles are, even though so much time has passed. And also reflecting on like I was also one kid sharing a 2-bedroom small home, with a single mother, and like Teodora said, facing food insecurity. At some point, like we were like houseless, and going through all of those struggles here in Pacoima, a community that at the time was very heavily burdened by like gang violence, drug addiction, and even today, like drug addiction and gang violence is still something that's very prevalent in the community. But just kind of like hearing how there was folks that were reaching out to other youth in the community that that were educated or had more awareness, like you said, which kind of reminds me of our collective, and the work that we're doing, and that like our mission is to inspire other folks to get civically engaged, to create like tangible action, to create like more like sustainable change, right? And yeah, just I guess that like this is the whole point of like why we wanted to have you here, like to learn from you, to hear from you, to connect, to see like the similarities and where we're at now. But not only that, you know, to also like talk about like the successes that we've had in this community as well, right? Politically, now talking about like the work that you've done more as an adult in your awareness. You work with Pueblo Y Salud, you know, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, the work that you do with Pueblo Y Salud and how you are helping the community now with what we're going through today?
Well, one of the things that's you know, afflicting our community as it has, you know, I shared, you know, junior high where, you know, our streets were flooded by opiates, right? And I know conspiracies are sometimes people think you're crazy, but
I was just thinking about that.
yeah, I didn't realize, you know, the pills that were more popular were they were narrow in one end. They were called bullets, and then they had a little symbol that said F40. So if you were in that world, you wanted Lily F40s, right? And the key word here is Lilly. Okay, I didn't understand. Lilly Corporation is one of the biggest pharmaceuticals in the world. Started after the Civil War here. And I said, with all these so-called regulations and drug administrations and all that, how in the hell were our streets flooded with pills by the thousands that any kid in junior high could buy without somebody knowing or doing it intentionally? Right? Where's where's law enforcement? Where's the FBI? Where's the DEA? Where's all these bodies, right? So clearly, depending on how you look at things, you know, they are weapons of colonization. You know, as part of the being a board president of Alcohol Justice, we did some work in Whitewater Indian Reservation. You know, they have 70-80% alcoholism rate in those reservations. 1 in every 4 children are being born with fetal alcohol syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they are devastated.
Yeah.
They were and they are concentration camps.
Yeah.
The indigenous people were sent to the worst pieces of land in the country, and they have been decimated. You know, some of the younger folk started with AIM and American Indian Movement. They're trying to raise consciousness and recapture the richness of their culture and call it manhood, whatever. But the problem is still bad. I mean, I'm just talking about alcohol. They've got crystal meth. They were entrepreneurs were going there even before they legalized marijuana over here. They were trying to figure out a way to grow marijuana on Indian reservations so they could ship it out to other states. You know?
Yeah.
So we're still doing drug, tobacco, and alcohol abuse prevention. Education. We don't do treatment. And we've done a lot of civic involvement work, which was part of our original mission, was empowering our community, political representation. You know, we, prior to being Pueblo Y Salud, we were the Chicano Round Table, where some of us started getting more involved, not just Chicano activism, but we actually started moving into electoral politics, understanding we need to vote.
Right.
You know, because, some of us, we were younger, some people were talking about, revolution, Molotov cocktails, weapons, crazy. It wasn't that crazy, it's happening throughout the world. If you're with the big gangsters and you have an army, it's kind of like the gang situation, but, it's well armed and well financed with our tax dollars. That's why we're still stealing land or whatever resource we can take from other countries.
Yeah.
And if if we ever, if the U.S. ever falls from power, you know how they have these, they went after the Nazis, Just think of all the people we killed when we dropped the atomic bombs in Japan. Talk about war criminals. I mean, I don't know what else they could call us.
I mean,
we're part of them. We're part of the gang.
Yeah.
Even we're at the very low end. That's why, those are war crimes. That's like a huge oven,
Yeah.
like thousands of people burned up in an instant, and all that radiation sickness that developed after that.
Yeah, generational harm that came
So
after.
yeah, so there's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But reaching a level of awareness so that we can function within that reality and do what we can. When we got started as Chicano Roundtable, we had no political representation in the Northeast San Fernando, Latino voter representation. In the city of San Fernando, a small little city, less than 3 square miles, 5 councilmen, no Latino, even though the population here was 70-80% Latino already in 1984.
Yeah.
So at that point, we ran a man by the name of Jesse Margarito. We registered. When I say we, me, my brother, my sister, and a couple other people that had pulled me into that world. And we registered 300 people in San Fernando. So in 1984, we got Jesse Margarito elected. There had been 1 or 2 other council people. He's the first one to be elected in 20 or 30 years here in San Fernando. There had been 1 or 2 other council people, but they had been appointed. So to us, they were like the vendidos, they were like the sellouts, right?
Right.
And look at it now. In our trajectory on our civic involvement side, as out of Pueblo Y Salud, and it's a lot of years now.
Yeah.
We've registered. It should be double, but we registered maybe 65,000 people in the Northeast San Fernando Valley.
Wow.
We have been involved in the redistricting the last 30 years. At least I have, right? Maybe 40 now. I lose track. We drew the line so that we could win finally someplace. Because see, something people didn't understand either was you would talk to our own people, say, ¿Y por qué no podemos ganar? Why can't we win? You say, oh, because we're like the crabs, right? The whole analogy of a crab, if there's a bucket full of crabs and one is barely making it over, the other crabs pull him down.
Right.
It was never true. We were gerrymandered out of power for over 100 years.
Right.
Prior to Gloria Molina being elected to Board of Supervisors, we had not had a Latina Board of Supervisor in Los Angeles County in 100 years.
It's crazy.
Okay? This is the second largest Mexican city in the world, and we did not have one representative. And even now, it's lopsided. We only have one. Even though the population in LA is at least 50-60% Latino, right? We were gerrymandered out of power, meaning we never had a majority in any council district because of the way the lines were drawn. It had to take court action that required that we be allowed to create voting rights districts so a Latino or a Latina could get elected. Here in our part of the world, we helped draw the lines for the council district when Richard Alarcón got elected for the first time here in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. And to that point, so in 84, we had no representation. And then we were gerrymandered again not this time, the previous time, from the Senate district, the one Padilla left. Okay? So that's, we had somebody else win. But now that lines were redrawn last time again, Caroline Menjivar got in. Okay? That was a result of the lines being redrawn. See, nothing is happening by chance.
Yeah.
So we clearly, out of this organization, have shifted the political landscape, the paradigm. Now every position in the Northeast San Fernando Valley is held by a Latino, I should say Latinas, including San Fernando. When Jess got elected, he became one in 5 council members in San Fernando. Now 5 are Latinas, 1 Latino, 5, and as in my bio, Celeste was the mayor, and now she's she replaced. Yeah.
Assemblywoman.
So we have out of this organization, I think, played a key role
Yeah.
in shifting that landscape.
And I mean, I think that
Yeah.
I like that's the goal as like move people who want to like create like a certain like the how do I word this? I guess that's like the point, right? Of like being civically engaged is being able to drive that kind of change. And what would you say, like connecting back now to community and culture? What would you say that right now would be like key factors for community to focus on when it comes to like political landscape, community and culture? Like there's such a divide right now. How can we work with that divide? Someone who has seen so many chapters of, history since you've been here, with people kind of, some people are happy with election results, some people are not, How can we find...
What was it? 60% of Latino men voted for Trump, or what, nationally? Was it 60?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was 60.
Yeah.
So, I guess my question is like, now talking about community and culture, where there's this huge divide, how can we start to mend that? Or is there a mending in your perspective?
I'm not sure it's the mending as much as it is just really being aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just terrible. The whole thing of when I hear Trump and some of the things he says publicly, but people don't seem to see it, It's like, sometimes I thought this is at a different level when you see the Prince of Lies. I don't know if you know what I mean by that from a religious perspective, right? So this guy lies. This guy's an outlaw. Yet he's so popular with enough people to get elected. I know it's not the whole country because most people don't vote still, right? If you really look at what percentages vote, right? But that's the problem, right? The good people, if you do nothing, you know what I'm saying? Like in Nazi Germany, they said, they came and they took my neighbor away, and I did nothing. Then they came and they took my cousin or something. So the story goes, right? And I didn't do nothing. And then they came and took me away, and then nobody did nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People were being arrested. It's like. I question. I don't question it. It's propaganda, right?
Yeah.
Who controls the mechanisms of propaganda? The CNN, the Fox News, now the social media, and that social media. What do they call it? The trolls. If you start looking at some of, if you listen, they're saying some of those trolls are coming from another country. The big gangs, they're playing in that same world, and they're the ones convincing us to do something that goes against our own interests.
Yeah.
It may not even be Trump on his own.
Yeah. And I've also heard a big piece is accountability, not just to the Latino, Latina, Latinx community, but to our white community, to the community that has the majority vote to elect Trump. Because at the end of the day, we are a growing minority community. But we are influenced by the majority at times when we do vote. And a big part of, I think, I want to add to I've been in conversations with activists in the community, and one of the biggest things we hope to see these next 4 years is educating ourselves in language, making sure that we help each other, even though our Spanish is not the best, making study sessions, learning how to have the verbiage to be able to talk to folks, because when we talk about being civically engaged, we often lack the canvassers, we lack the community members to be able to speak to your neighbor with the proper like message.
Yeah.
And we should be unashamed to learn. And I think as someone who has grew up speaking Spanish, I'm the last of six, so my mother practiced a lot of English with me. I have probably like the worst Spanish from my siblings, but that doesn't mean that I do have the opportunity to improve, right? And I think a lot of folks are fearful of making mistakes in their speaking Spanish, but I think in the next 4 years, what we hope to see is folks be more brave, learn how to speak and use that. Because I'm not saying that people are not brave right now, but just finding that that opportunity and running with it to learn, so that we are a more united community in language. Because that's also one of the biggest things. Is like food is language. Yeah, but
Yeah.
our literal language has been a barrier in communicating these messages back to our communities. But when we talk about Pueblo Y Salud, I know that's something you guys focus on is intervention, and prevention. I think that's also a big part of it is language, learning how to speak to someone when it comes to drug abuse, but it also reflects back into politics as well. Having having both, it's a big belt. You need to be able to fill your belt with as much as possible to have the right reach. And one of the things I do like about Pueblo Y Salud is the reach that you all have had in the bandwidth of your organization. And Ruben, and if you can share a bit more about your time with Pueblo Y Salud and organizing with the Cesar Chavez Committee, because I know that Pueblo Y Salud has been involved with that. How has organizing been in these past few years? I know that we try to attend annually ourselves, but can you share a bit about what that looks like when it comes to organizing our community to come out to march?
Well, it's always a task, to mobilize people at any given point in time. And I know we had COVID and all that, and it's kind of becomes an excuse sometimes, now that it's kind of gone, or it's not as deadly anyways.
Yeah.
It's always a challenge, and currently we're attempting the Chavez ambassadors. I don't know if you've kept
I
up
saw
with
that.
Yes, we saw that.
We're trying to pull some resources, and we have. Actually, thankfully, we haven't hit the budget we wanted, but we're running it on a shoestring. We have about 20 to 30 young people involved right now.
Wow.
We had a goal of 110, but for the first year, I guess we're okay. And we wanted to involve, I think, 10 or 12 schools, high schools. I think we have 5 or 6 represented, where we hopefully take them through monthly discussions and trainings to build consciousness, teach them how to organize, and to try and build greater numbers again. When different years we've had 3,000 to 5,000 people marching. It had been dropping. Then right after COVID, we started again. We moved the location, and this last year I think we might have hit 1,000 to 1,500 people. So this year's goal is maybe mobilizing a couple of thousand. And that's the intent of the Cesar Chavez Committee. It was and is to keep Cesar Chavez's legacy alive, but not just as a figure, a historical figure, but as a mechanism to involve younger people in social activism. Go out there and march, go out there and get some adrenaline going.
Yeah.
Go out there and carry a sign and think about the sign you're carrying. I know to get drugs out of our school, fentanyl out of our neighborhoods, alcohol.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part.
The biggest.
We had an overconcentration of bars and liquor stores. I grew up in Pacoima when we had a bar in every corner.
Yeah.
And that contributes to the gang violence. Everything we talk about, it contributes to the economics.
Yeah.
Even now, you get a DUI. By the time you're through with fines and school and insurance costs, you're spending 15, maybe 20,000. I'm not quite keeping up. that's draining our community. Somebody is in a gang thing. You know, I know some young people. We're going to have a speaker this year that did 33 years in prison, you know. And every time he come up to the parole board, you know, he got involved with the Sun Valley boys over there. And he did 33 years. I mean, the impact that had on his family, you know, that's income that didn't come. It keeps us in poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, people in jail, people paying fines. You know, that's having an economic impact besides the social impact. Call it the domestic violence, the gang violence. It's always fueled by drugs and alcohol. I was never at a place when all hell broke loose that people hadn't been smoking weed and drinking.
Yeah.
That's besides later on, you know, when you start getting into the crack and then the crystal meth and then the coke, you know.
Yeah.
So nothing good ever came out of that. And it's costing us pain, you know. A guy goes home and beats up his wife, you know, because he's drunk or in a stupor, you know. I mean, they are clearly elements designed to keep us tontos, to keep us stupefied, you know, so that we don't progress, so that we don't sit around and have pláticas and, you know, do something healthy and grow so that we can do everything we talk about.
Yeah.
Political representation, understand the issues, immigration reform, you know. Look, all these artificial borders, you touched on that, you know. We had open borders. Borders should not exist. We have a human right to travel wherever we can get a job, wherever we can grow food, wherever we can make progress, right? Why should somebody say, no, you can't? This is Mother Earth. You know, I mean, we're taking it to another level, and this will sound crazy, as the whole notion of private property, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, why should, you know, I just saw an ad from a house on the street where they built it really nice, and then I thought, I wonder what it's worth. So I went on the thing, whatever.
Zillow.
Yeah, that one. And they have a house in back. They're asking $3,000 for, it's a new little thing, one bedroom, one living room, but it's really nice, right? I saw the picture.
Yeah.
$3,000 to rent.
Damn.
My goodness.
You know, a room is rent. So those are other issues, and we all exploit them, you know.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a house and you can rent it, then you rent. But we got to try and control that.
Greed.
Yes, that's the exact word. Free enterprise is very good. Greed is what's causing all the problems in the world. Taking people's land, taking their resources.
Yeah.
Thousands of people. The land grab right now in the Middle East, at least 50, 60,000 people have been killed because somebody wants to take land that doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a tale
And that's
of all
not to
the
say
time.
that everybody has the right. There's enough land for everybody. There's enough resources for everybody. You know? We just need to do it. You know, here's something that I think about. If we can pipe oil from from Alaska to the Gulf of Mexico, we could pump water from the East Coast, excuse me, to turn the Antelope Valley into a paradise.
Yeah.
That's true.
Why is that not a big project?
Yeah.
Why?
Excuse me.
Okay.
Well,
Those are the things that you guys need to assess.
Yeah.
How do we make it better? It's not in a vacuum, right? Why can't we have an amnesty? I've met people that said, you know what, I've been here 20 years and I haven't gone back because it's, how am I going to come back?
Yeah.
My parents died and I couldn't even go to the funeral. You know, I've heard more than one story like that.
So many. My mom, you know, she hasn't seen her parents since I'm 31. So since I've been 30, the last time
And it
she
has
saw her parents
an
was
easy solution.
when I was 1.
Yeah, it has an easy solution. You know, amnesty for everybody that's here, because they're already been here, paying taxes. We need the labor. Obviously, the labor is needed. People that work hard, you know. and then close the borders, but you don't close the border by building walls, because that's not going to work anyways. We close the border by just doing another guest worker program.
Yeah.
People don't want to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
If they can come and work, they can go back.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's balancing out. The migration flow has decreased from Mexico, not because of the walls or all that. I'm not talking about the caravans from Venezuela, Honduras, and other places. The middle class in Mexico is actually growing. There is no need for them to migrate the way my grandparents and my mother had to migrate.
Yeah.
There's still a need in the smaller villages, but by and large, people that have a profession or a business or
Yeah.
a job in Mexico, they're not going to come over here
Yeah.
and be hassling with the migra or running across the mountain or, being chased by INS.
dangerous.
Yeah. Well, we're
Yes, risking your life.
we're coming up to the last 5 or so minutes of our segment here of our show, and we just want to give you, just a couple of final words. Any message you have for our listeners, in regards to what we were talking to, in regards to community and culture, which is, again, the new segment we're about to embark on these next 3 months. But truly, like, whatever you would like to share.
Just have faith. Keep growing. There's a great cartoonist that used to do cartoons for the LA Times, and I had an opportunity to meet him. Has incredible work on social and political issues by Emma Conrad. And I had a chance to meet him, and I asked him, I said, where do you get your ideas? And she said, read, read, read. So I would just want to repeat that. You just got to read. And now you don't even have to read as much. It'll be read for you, or you watch it on YouTube. But grow and understand the dynamic of the world and the forces that are making people do what they do, and so that we can try and improve it. That little example of water into the Antelope Valley, we could grow, I don't know, that's rich soil. We could grow enough food to feed thousands of people. Turn it into another San Joaquin Valley, that is rich soil, and we export food to the whole world, but not everybody profits from that.
Yeah.
You see, so we have to. It's multifaceted, but so it's complex. So that's all I can. I guess if I would encourage you to get involved.
Yeah.
At whatever level, the arts. Learn to express yourself. Learn to play an instrument, sing a song, write a poem, draw, paint.
That's for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know what else to
Thank you
say.
so
That's
much,
so
Ruben.
that's so on brand and so on theme with just like today's conversation with, we had Mirinda from the MACT project earlier today, who's a 17-year-old doing exactly what you just said, teaching youth how to get connected with their inner artist and how to express themselves through art here in Pacoima, and she's hoping to reach, the greater San Fernando Valley. But thank you so much, Ruben. Thank you for your
Ruben.
time.
Sure, my pleasure.
We had a great time listening,
This conversation was great.
We hope that our listeners also enjoyed it. We will be back on air this Sunday, which would be the third Sunday of the month. It would be December 15th. We're going to be on air from 10:30 to 12:30. And we'll catch you guys then. You guys were tuned in to Voces Unidas on KROJ 101.5 FM. This show is produced by Valley Views SFE Media and Voces Unidas in Pacoima. We're here coming to you guys live from the studio in Pueblo Y Salud in the City of San Fernando. Today's hosts were Diosy,
Melisa,
And Teodora.
and we're signing off with Ruben Rodriguez. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.